Hey, Adelaide, how you doing? Right. I'm Stuart, and I'm here to talk about digital media.
Yeah.
But before I do that, I just want to say that some of you are sleep researchers in the audience, right? And you know that maybe if you take someone like Jack and give that person psychedelic drugs, you get this. Because that's what I used to do as well before I changed to digital media. So let's see what happens. Alright, so now look, I told some of my friends that tonight I was going to be doing this stand-up comedy thing, and some of them were like, oh dude, are you okay? Are you sure you want to be like maybe standing in a room, it might be dark, you might not see anyone's face, it might be dead quiet, no one laughs, it's just dead. And I was like, dude, I'm a uni lecturer. That's what we call Tuesday. Now, digital media is about communication, right? It's about getting people to communicate better. It's about teaching them to do graphic design and technology and kind of make stuff that looks cool, right? Now, the way I do this is I like to break down traditional structures. I like to use the principle of Fushiwa, which is an ancient, semi-ancient philosophy, predominantly male, that I think students need to grasp hold of with both hands. It's definitely changed my life. Now, the academic term for this is fuck with shit until it works. That's what I do in all of my work, okay? And some would say in my home life too. Yeah, just shush you, don't say anything. Now, when people find out that I work in digital media, they say, well, what is that? I guess you're really good with computers, yeah? And maybe, yeah, you're one of those guys who works from home all the time, and I bet you never wear any pants, right? And I'm like, dude, that's not true. I actually go to the office all the time, and in fact, I'm one of those people that I think they're trying to encourage to work from home a little bit more, because obviously I dressed up tonight, you know? But one of the great things about working with young people is, of course, they're obsessed with digital communication. So you might think, you know, oh, what a cool job to have. You must be doing something like this, right? That's what I do. I'm that guy. Or maybe I'm like this. You know, a bit of that sort of Tom Cruise action. But the reality is it's a little bit less glamorous than that. I'm more like that guy. You know, the guy in the van who's doing all the work. You know, old Tom Cruise is out there jumping off stuff. And even this is a little bit more, you know, too glamorous. The reality is actually more like this. You know, I'm this kind of lecturer guy, and I'm online, you know, and I'm like tweed from the waist up, and up shells from the, you know, and there's just no one doing this. So, now look, I'm from the UK, as some of you probably know, or you may have picked up from my slightly drunken accent. And, of course, the UK is widely known for its warm beer and its sort of crumbling old structures, or as you know them, dentistry. And I've been here for about 20 years now, okay? And people back home say to me, like, oh, you know, what's Adelaide like? I've been there, what's it like? And I say, oh, you know, it's going to be really great when it's finished. They say, can you send us some pictures? And I always choose this next picture, I always choose this picture as a great scene of Adelaide. And I choose it because of its deep sunset orange tones. That's just the reality of Adelaide, isn't it, right? Yeah, now listen, I'll quickly tell you about my family because they're all really into kind of graphic design and communication as well, because they have to be. I'm really asking them to step up. So we've got Charlie. This is Charlie. He's a cute little chihuahua. And then we've got Maya. She's a little Bernese. We've got. And then our latest addition is Indy. She's a cute little American staffy as well. They're all kind of cute and cuddly and stuff, right? And I've got a partner and some kids as well. And they're all like, I'm asking them all to step up and really communicate and understand graphic design so that we can make cool stuff, so we can make awesome, you know, birthday invites. There's nothing worse than a birthday invite that's just got the wrong font. We'll get to that later. But anyway, I asked a lot of them. And look, Charlie, you know, Charlie is kind of old school. He likes to sort of do the traditional stuff whenever he can. He likes to help out. But the thing about it is Maya and Indy, they're a little bit more modern, like the kids, you know, they're prone to distraction, not quite, you know, a little bit, not quite there, especially Indy, you know, sausages, you know. But graphic design, this kind of design stuff is really important. Like a few years ago, I made this kick-ass flyer, right? And it got us our rental property. You know, and it was really cool. We had cute kids at the time, just one little cute cat. And that's how we got the rental property that we're applying for in this tough housing market, right? But I just thought it would be really interesting to think about how the family has grown now and see whether we can pull that up again, whether it's time for us to sort of buy a property. Charlie has kind of progressed a little bit. He's a lot more aggressive now, okay? I think he just kind of sees red all the time. You know? And the reality is that Indy, well, you know, she's a bit sort of nervous, and so we see a lot of yellow all the time. And if you've ever turned on the toaster in the morning to be greeted by the smell of 1,000 alley cats, you'll know that that's just absolutely awful. You have to get a new toaster instantly. Maya now, you might think, I know what you might be thinking, you know, we see a lot of brown with Maya, but no, the reality is with Indy, she likes to destroy stuff, so we see a lot of bills. You know, that's what we see. She's just ripping stuff apart, okay? So, alright, so now let's kind of stop talking about me, even though I could probably go on for a couple more days. And let's think about how to make stuff look cool. When you do digital communication, when you make stuff, it's got to look cool, right? You've got to have, I'm going to show you good design, I'm going to show you bad design, and you want to make cool stuff, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is fonts or typefaces, right? And fonts, you know, there are some really bad ones out there. Some people use these really horrible ones, okay? Now these things start to make my eyes bleed because they're so bad, and I just can't understand why people do it, right? It's not just me, I promise you, it's not just me that thinks this, right? It's other people as well. You see this kind of stuff in the workplace all the time. Someone puts up a sign, you know, please wash your dishes, and then someone else goes, dude, come on. And I hate fonts, they're bad so much that when somebody gives me a document to edit, sometimes I'll just quietly change all the fonts in the document. I think that some of these fonts should be deleted from the world. And there was this one time when I saw this menu, and it was using Comic Sans and Papyrus, two of the worst fonts ever made, and I was kicked out of the restaurant because I set it on fire. Sorry, the menu, not the restaurant. I wouldn't go that far. And so, yeah, I'm passionate about fonts, okay? We have to get it. Now, I'm also interested in when font design goes a bit crazier, right? Now, Jack mentioned heavy metal before, or death metal, I think, and that's a really interesting place to start with font design, right? Because death metal bands use these crazy fonts. This is an example of the band Obituary, and their logo here, you can see it's quite spiky, but that's actually quite tame. It's not really that crazy. Now, I'm talking about the ones that are thorny and spiky, difficult to read. You don't know what the name of the band is, right? You've got a bit of a clue. This is a death metal band, right? So it's going to be called something like Acid Witch, or Rotten Nun's Teeth. That's actually my uncle's band in the UK. So you can guess a little bit, but I like to play with it. So does anyone here have an idea what this one is? Can you read that out? That's Fluffy Bunny. Yeah. What about this one? Cute puppy. Yeah. And then this one here, this one I think is really cool. It's quite intense, right? But let's see what it looks like in one of those terribly bad fonts. Soft Jazz Ladies or Tuesday Night Bible Study. It doesn't quite have the same impact, does it? It's not quite as cool, The point is, when you're choosing fonts, you have to make sure they communicate the right thing. Because even if you have a great image and you have the right words, if you get the font wrong, it can be a disaster, like you see here. Just feels a bit sinister, doesn't it? It's not quite the right message. Alright, so now, as I've said, I'm obviously into digital media, so I'm obviously a hardcore Apple Mac kind of guy, right? And this is the kind of equipment. Equipment's an important thing. I use this kind of MacBook Air. The latest PC laptop, of course, looks like this. And a bit of an IT joke there, a bit of a cheap shot, I know. But they are getting better. They are having some more accessories added. You've got your security device, and then you've got your phone attachment, and then you've got your carry case, and you can actually get speakers now as well. So now, look, obviously I'm being a bit facetious here. And once I was teaching some students, and one of the students looked at me dead in the eye, and he says, "Do you know what? I'm sick of your Apple elitism." And I was like, wow, and I love confident students, right? And I was like, well, maybe he's right. Maybe I need to sort of stand back and stop being so silly. And I was just about to apologise, and then he was crushed to death by his laptop. There was nothing I could do. I even tried pressing Control Z. Didn't work. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk about is layout. Layout's really important. Spacing, not just fonts, but spacing. Some people just don't seem to get the spacing right, and it ends in just disaster. Look at this. What are they thinking? Why? And it goes on. There's lots of these examples, right? Look at this magazine. Come on, people, think about this. What about this one? Trying to get into the holiday bug? Or is it the holiday stomach bug? So layout and spacing is important. The other thing that's really important in this area is, of course, logo design. Logo design is a minefield for the uninitiated, right? Now, some of my colleagues say to me, like, "Stuart, don't be juvenile. Don't be silly. Be serious about this. It's kind of a science." Debatable, I know. But, you get stuff like this. Maple syrup on the lot. Like, is it just my imagination, or does that look like something else? Is that like an ad for sort of like got prostate trouble? Just go and dust it. What about this one? This one sort of speaks for itself as well. Look at this. Super Hitters baseball. Yeah, right. Okay. So logo design is fraught with problems. This is one of my favourite ones here, of course. The classic Institute of Oriental Studies. I'm pretty sure they don't use that anymore. Maybe they only have it on the back door. And then of course this one for jazz dance. This one's interesting because if you actually half close your eyes and tilt your head, you can actually see two people dancing. And who could forget our own Australian government's job with this one? Don't use a logo that's going to give the wrong message. Of course, you can repurpose a logo like this. I'm yet to run that past an MP. I'm good at that. Alright, now, so let's just have a bit of a deeper look at what's going on. Now, of course, our host Dave has done a lot of work to set all this up and promote all the speakers. And I said, "Dave, do you want some help with the flyers for this?" And I think he thought that I meant that was code for "yours are crap, let me sort it out." Right? But I didn't mean that. He's done a great job, and I wouldn't even change the fonts here. But I thought I'd show you an example of the kind of bad design stuff that we get, not just from like beginner students, but also from people who should know better. You sort of see something like this, right? You've got awful fonts, you've got rancid colours, you've got like this kind of mixture of borders and misalignment and no space, and it just ends up being this kind of like toxic soup. That's not what we want. Well, that reminds me, I'm trying to think of a name for my band actually. Toxic soup, is that any good? I'll come back to that maybe. Now look, when I see good design, that's my point, I'm happy, I'm like, yeah, you're learning, right? And when I see the bad stuff, it's more like I start to feel like this. Part of me is dying inside when I start to bleed. Actually, when I was making this one, my 5-year-old son, said, "You want to make one as well?" He said, "Dad, that's what you look like in the morning." And also you might see that he decided to put Mummy in the background. Now, another factor to be thinking about here is user experience, right? User experience is really important. Well, as professionals call it, bugs. Right, and or UX. And here's an example. This is an ATM machine in Europe somewhere. Someone didn't think that through as well. Like, it's just alienating, And the equivalent of that is something like you're on a website, you're trying to put your birth date in, and you've got to scroll back from 2025, through 1900 or something, depending on how old you are. And so that's just really, really annoying. Another really good example of user experience is source. Okay, so remember in the 80s, some of you remember the 80s, we had to do this kind of like clapping thing to get the source out. It took ages. Now what we do is we have this kind of squeezy bottle. This is what we do. It's a bit more messy, especially if you've got kids, but it saves a bit of time. That's the UX experience. That's what you need. So the source is really important. We've got to think about source when we think about designing stuff. Now websites are another example, of course. Look at this website. This is actually a current website. A Florida company called Gates and Fences. It's full of borders and ugly buttons and rancid colours. It's like this toxic soup. It's got this horrible marble background. It's just looking really, really gross. It's stuck in 1996. Today, websites look much more like this. We can tell this one's really good because I did it. So a friend of mine called Sarah, and she runs this company called Eat Plants for Health, and it's got striking photographs, and it's got like a logo that doesn't look like, you know, any kind of genitalia, which is actually important because it's full of vegetables. So I had to be very careful to make sure, you know. And of course, when you do a website like this, you've got to use some stock images, and you've got to be careful not to use the cheesy ones. In this kind of industry, the classic thing is the woman laughing at salad picture, which we see a lot of. You see loads of these, and they're really, really overused, and they're quite cliche. There's so many examples of them. Now, some of you academics here might be thinking, hang on a second, he's used a bit of generative AI in this presentation, hasn't he? I can see it. So I'm going to show you one more picture, and I want you to tell me whether you can pick up the subtle AI telltale signs. Can you spot the Gen AI? Let's have a look. Any clues there? She's got, you know. Anyway, Gen AI, that's a whole other kettle of fingers, right? So maybe I'll come back next year and talk about that. So let's just wrap up with the 30-second lecture that we need to kind of get students' attention. The top tips, right? So we've got like logo shape, really important. Don't show a dick. Quite simple, isn't it, right? Space, yes. Borders, no. Layout's really important. Avoid that rectangle soup. Don't go for that. Think about fonts, of course. Really, really important. You don't want to make your eyes bleed. None of that. Use a Mac. Don't get crushed by a PC. And of course, think UX. Consider the source. Now, to put all of this stuff together and help you remember it, I'm just going to kind of link those things together. Oh, wait a minute. That's the name for my band, isn't it? Dick Soup and the Bloody Crust Sauce. Thank you very much for your